Time. Okay. Well, it is Monday, November 10th at 5:30 p.m. And I will call this Joint Animal Services Commission regular meeting to order. It looks like we have everyone is Tumwater here?
Yep.
Gabby's here and Kelly is here.
I'm
Okay,
good.
well, looks like we are all here. And so with that, I would ask for a motion to approve our agenda. It looks like we have meeting minutes on our consent agenda.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes. And agenda.
Second.
Kelly, was that you with a second? I can't hear you. Can we bring
Was
her
me with a
up?
second. Can you hear me now?
I'm not sure. Councilmember Agabi, could you also speak so we can make sure that we don't have a sound issue?
I'm here. Can you hear
There
me?
it
We
is.
have a sound issue. Hold on one
Okay.
sec. We can't hear either one of you.
We're just gonna hold so we can have that second for the record.
Aaron and I can hear each other, so we can have our own conversation.
Testing.
Wait, that's very true. How you doing?
Try another speaker. Yes.
That's
Try another one. What it should be. So. Try this. Try another speaker.
Maybe we should look back in again.
Try another one. Try again.
You mind if I take it?
Oh, please take over. Ryan, saying something?
Like a song or just a speech? No.
Did you guys fix it?
I think they're still in the soundless void.
I think so.
Sharp HDMI. How about now? Can you hear us okay?
We can still
Yeah.
hear you. Can you hear us?
We still can. Thank you for your patience. So this did it not that long ago? It's picking up, like it can hear me. Yeah, we just can't hear them.
If we restart the Zoom with that,
Yeah, that might work. Let's restart. Let's restart.
So the issue's kind of twofold because
Yeah.
if we restart it, we lose the live stream.
Yeah.
But nobody can hear them regardless right now, so.
Yeah. This is all where it needs to be. I have two participants, both not receiving. They're
Barb,
connected.
they're trying to work out a sound issue in the room. They can't hear us, but we can hear each other.
They can hear each other too.
let's give Barbara a shout.
You can hear each other, they can hear each other.
Barbara, would you take yourself off mute and try to say something, please?
Barbara, you're still muted, according to your.
Can we
Can
go
you
back
hear me
so that
now?
we can just hear it out of the computer?
Can hear you, but they can't hear anything we're doing over here.
Streaming, it would be able
I
to
can hear you.
hear.
Mhm.
Um,
We can hear them. They just can't hear us.
We can hear you now,
Yeah.
so we could pause.
Yeah.
Let me just try that for a little bit.
Thank you.
It,
Why don't you turn it up all the way and I'll get YouTube up just to see what it sounds like.
okay.
No, I'd be happy with other
You
stuff.
guys mind speaking again, just to let us that bit?
Testing your sound.
I can barely hear you.
And I'm loud.
I know.
I can hear the participants on screen. And I can
I
hear.
think it's a speaker issue on our end in here.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. And again, just looking for a second for that motion.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve tonight's agenda and our consent item, which is just the meeting minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes unanimously. We have an agenda. First item on our agenda is under public comment. And it looks like we have 0 written public comments for the record. Is there anyone wishing to address this commission? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in the public wishing to, or on Zoom wishing to address this commission?
Do I just hit this?
Did they use their hand?
Can you, Margaret, if you want to give public comment to the general meeting, can you raise your hand? If not, just keep it lowered and I won't promote you at this time.
Okay.
Okay,
Seeing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our 2026 proposed budget, being presented by our Executive Director, Sarah Hawk. It is a public hearing item, so I will declare this public hearing opened at 5:38 PM.
bring it up in 1 second.
You bet.
For tonight's presentation, the majority of this, we're gonna keep it short. It's to go over JASCOM's request from the October meeting, which is to see what the assessments would look like. If we were to keep assessments same static as last year. So just a reminder, the assessments presented at the October meeting were what is shown on the screen, which was an overall 2% decrease over 2025. Per JASCOM's request, they wanted to see what that would look like if we were to keep it at the same level as 2025. So we'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to pull this up so you guys could see what was presented in October. So updated from October, in order to bring assessments up to last year's amount, we decreased the general reserve use by $40,500 to get us as close as we could to last year's numbers. So you'll see that change highlighted right here. So instead of $135,000, we are now using $94,500. That does change the assessments here in revenue as shown here. So I just want to mark that change in our revenue portion of our budget, which is just the increased portion of the assessments to the revenue. And so what assessments look like when I brought us as close to last year. Now keep in mind, I couldn't make it exact because populations have changed. And so the per capita applied, this was as close as I could get to last year's numbers. So there's still some differentiation with the county paying $2 more. Olympia would be paying $20 more than 2025, and then Lacey would still be paying just under $2,500 less, and Tumwater would still be about $221 less. But this was as close as I could get us to 2025 assessment numbers.
Gotcha.
And so agency contributions go up that $40,000, 500, shared revenue goes down in that same amount. For a total revenue budget of $3,941,922. Expenses match that with general services, shelter operations, field services, restricted grants, licensing, and depreciation. Expenses are at $3,941,922. And so,
On depreciation,
yes,
how much do we have left? To depreciate, are we talking about building and vehicles and
this is just the building.
just the building? That's okay.
It's the standard depreciation for the building. The building has been paid off for several years now. So total recommended budget that staff is presenting. It is an increase of 2025 overall due to increased animals, tariffs, increased inflation, steps, all of that are included in that. So there is a 9% increase for $336,000, $336,975.
Yeah, I saw our intake numbers are up to the end of October have already eclipsed last year's numbers.
Correct. So that is the end of my budget presentation. Are there any questions?
So the increase.
In terms of
Oh,
this,
hold on. I think Peter,
So the increase in 2026 budget is the 336,000 some change, right? And that's a 9%, right? Correct?
1 second, Peter, we're gonna try to bring up the gain.
Peter, do you mind, Councilmember Godwin, do you mind repeating your question?
So I said, so the increase in 2026 budget is with 336,000 some change, right? And that represents 9% from 2025. And if I understand what you were saying is if you hold the rate with which each jurisdiction will bring into the will pay, we're still within at least for Tumwater, I saw like what 221, was that 100 or thousands?
So the question is, how much is the difference for Tumwater with the adjustment?
Yes.
the adjustment, let me pull up the screen again so you can see. And I'll bring it back. So for Tumwater, you would be $199,293, which is actually $221 less than 2025.
That's exactly what I thought I saw. So I think looking across the board, it seems like the only people who will actually pay a little is Tustin County, $2, and Olympia, $20. And then Lacey and Tumwater are paying less. So I don't see any reason why we should believe about this issue. So I'm saying let's move on. Let's get it rolling. It seems like we're doing good.
Great. So just to confirm, since our speakers are so low, you as Tom Waters' representative are on board, you think the assessments look
Correct,
good?
correct.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councilmember Agati.
If the other jurisdictions would like to weigh in, now would be the time to do that. So if we want, Kelly, are you okay? And Commissioner?
So the Board of County Commissioners is aware that we're having this conversation tonight and wanted to make sure that I made it clear that we're still looking in every spec of the county budget to see what we can find. We were talking that the budget deficit we're facing is still over $9 million, so we're making some pretty large scale cuts at the county. So I know that the position of the county is, if possible, to kind of go back and look at the numbers that were presented to us at the last meeting. The county would prefer to pay the $20,000 less amount. So that was the message I was told to bring back today, and the county is looking for me to send them the outcome of this vote after the meeting concludes. So I'll be sending that, and they specifically asked for me to send over a list of who voted in what way. So.
Very nice. Okay, so,
At this time, what Joint Animal Services staff need is agreed direction for us to go.
Mhm.
So that I can present the final budget for vote in December.
gotcha. And with that submission, will you be passing this on to the county for their staff to review prior to?
We would be sending communications to all jurisdictions, what is decided tonight, so that staff are aware of what is going to be voted on at the December meeting.
And so our December meeting is scheduled for
December 8th.
the 8th. And then between now and the 8th, if we sent over our vote and the county wanted to, I guess we don't really have an appeal process. But if they wanted to have that conversation, if we voted for what we see here tonight, would they have room to?
I think Deputy Mayor, maybe just the vote tonight is the direction for Sarah to provide to do the preparation for the final vote on December 8th. It wouldn't be for a final vote of the budget tonight.
Yeah.
So there would still be time for Commissioner Klaus to check in with the council, the rest of the commission on kind of the direction that Animal Services has provided to Sarah to prep for the December 8th meeting.
Okay, so with that, are we all comfortable with giving Sarah direction to proceed with the numbers that she's presented tonight?
Yep.
Roll call. Ms. Green?
And let's try this really quickly. I'm gonna unmute for a second to see if we get some better audio when we're talking to the remote participants through here. We're testing this out. I apologize, everybody, for all of the tech issues that we're having. So let's see if this may be a temporary.
Oh, I like that. It's a little reverse. Check 1, 2.
Kelly to come back.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so because I imagine that maybe some commissioners or leadership from the county will come back and watch this video, can we just really briefly do an overview of like the rationale that JASCOM gave to go back and look at the numbers? And because you came to us last meeting with different numbers, and so can we just do a really quick overview of what the discrepancy was and why the commission, I mean, I know because I was here, but just so that anyone listening can hear, you know, the difference between the numbers from last meeting and tonight's numbers.
And I'll let Sarah answer this, but it really did boil down to reserves and our use of reserves. But Sarah, you wanted to share a little bit how we
No, absolutely. And so at the October meeting where we presented the 2026 proposed budget, several of the Joint Animal Services Commissioners were concerned that they were paying less in assessments for 2026 than they were in 2025, especially with the increase in budget, with the 9% increase, and they were seeing a 2% decrease in their assessment. There was some concern that we were overusing our use of reserves. As we dived further into that presentation, and of course, anybody who is watching this meeting can look and watch the October meeting through online. But that dives into more about our general use of reserves. And so over time, we have already used over $2 million of reserves over the last 6 years and are projected to use another 1.5 in reserves in the next 5 years when we are in the middle of potentially a capital campaign coming up for a new building, or we have a lot of projects. It's also been estimated that it's going to take about 1.5 million to keep our building operational in the next few years. So that's all money that could be going to spend towards emergency fixes, upgrading certain things with necessary, or any kind of capital projects in the future. Instead, JASCOM's concern was that we are continually using these funds when we should be. It has been the wish of JASCOM year over year to reduce our reliance on reserves to pay the true cost of service. Did I encapsulate everything, Deputy Mayor?
I think so, especially with the capital the future coming out capital. We don't know how this potential new legislation is going to, if it's gonna work at all. You know, can we do a tax area for animal services? We don't really have solid numbers yet on, you know, a new building, a new structure. But we're the real hope is that we stop using reserves altogether. Now, I don't know if that's a dream or if that is something that can become a reality, because when you look at our budget without using reserves, and in this case, we're really just kind of just using, you know, not very much, but we're fortunate enough to have reserves, right? Because I'm on other boards where it's like you look at these reserves and you're like, why can't people care about this as much as they care about pets and animals, right?
Yeah.
So we're fortunate enough to have reserves, but we got some serious capital outlays coming. If we're going to move on to a new facility, which is sorely needed, and you know, explore possibilities of expanding services, especially kind of services that the county keeps saying that, you know, they want and need, and would like us to, you know, go vet out and do the homework on, which, you know, we can't, we're not gonna. But the fact of the matter is that if we continue to burn up these reserves, we may not have the match dollars that we need in the future to, you know, do a new facility.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
Councilmember Green has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Can you hear me at all? Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I dropped off there for a minute. My internet went down, but I just wanted to add in. I mean, I'll say for Olympia, I don't think anyone would have heartburn if we went down to the reduced amount. But as Chair Miller was just saying, you know, it feels a little bit like we would be taking advantage of the fact that Joint Animal Services does have reserves, and I recognize the county is in a more difficult budget scenario percentage-wise than many of us. But I feel like I would be. It's disappointing to me to hear that there's still discussion of, you know, not recognizing an ILA like this, feeling like that's even an area to discuss whether a budget can be cut. You know, it feels like to me the agreement is such that for me it wouldn't, for the city of Olympia, you know, I wouldn't approach it as a place we could even talk about cuts because it is part of this larger partnership agreement. So you know, I know it's come up off and on, but it feels like if the county needs this to be at a place where it's more of a flexible budget for them, you know, I don't know what that looks like to consider, you know, long term, not this year, not right now, but you know, does the county need to be at a place where this is on a contracted dollar amount and not part of the ILA?
Thanks, Chair. So I appreciate the responses. I think, the county is well aware of the hope to kind of wean ourselves off of the reserves. That's been a kind of ongoing conversation throughout the year, and it's been made pretty clear to them the history of where that came from and how we had Commissioner Mintzer, I believe, on this commission when that agreement was made, so he was aware of some of the history. But I think the question that I'll be facing when I go back is what was the rationale that staff had when they came to us at the last meeting with the reduced amount? And why was the proposed budget initially not to keep the status quo? I think that's a question that I could kind of use some help articulating the answer for. I did take some notes at the last meeting about it, but I had like a couple sentences, and I want to make sure that I can speak to that question when they ask me at our next board meeting. So is there, does anyone have a response to that? And then I guess to Councilmember Green, the county, even though we have had a lot of, you know, pushback or feedback from the county, I think at this point in time, the question is not whether or not we should cut the JASCOM budget, because we had that conversation already and it was decided not to cut JASCOM. So the county was actually going into our budget discussions with status quo already. So that's already actually been well, the final budget doesn't get approved till December, but we had that conversation, it's in the past, and we were maintaining status quo. But then after the last JASCOM meeting, when I came back and they had the numbers that were presented last month, they kind of were asking me, like as a representative of the county, why I would approve JASCOM moving forward with a budget that says status quo if we were brought a budget last month with a slight decrease. So I think that's the question that they'll be asking.
No, and it's an excellent question. From a staffing perspective, knowing that several jurisdictions had been discussing that there were budget deficits across the board, we decided as a whole that we would leave the same use of reserves that we used last year, bringing it forward, right? We didn't use more than last year, but we used the same amount. But what that did with the use of keeping it status quo did give that 2% decrease. And so to us, the rationale with staffing was if we're maintaining status quo with the use of reserves that we did last year, and that gives our jurisdictions a small, you know, reduction in cost, great. That's the whole point of these budget discussions is we bring you a proposed one. But it was my understanding that while I brought that proposal for the budget and the assessments to you guys, you as a commission as a whole, or I should say majority of the commission, it was not, you know, necessarily unanimous, but the majority requested reviewing what it would look like if we maintain status quo rather than a reduction in the assessment specifically. In that sense of maintaining our commitment of reducing reserves year over year.
I would just add on to everything that Sarah said too of, you know, what we elected to bring forward, which is the continued reserve use from the previous year, is that Sarah and her team also went through the budget line items and have been working on potential contracts as well. And so all of those add up to a little bit of a difference. So it's not just necessarily keeping and maintaining the same reserve use. It's also the diligence that they're doing of taking a look at, you know, where are there some savings across some line items? Where are there some contracts that are helping supplement the offsets of indirect costs?
And that's a great point. Thank you. I forgot to mention that. Like some of the reason why we were able to either maintain or have that 2% reduction is because of our continued ability to contract out with other jurisdictions to bring in more revenue.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and so with that, I feel like we have direction, and I would like to send it out as it is. And if the county would like to respond, I would love to hear their response. But I feel like if we're gonna do what we said we're gonna do, which is stop the reliance on reserves. We all know how that is. We all have personal budgets, and relying on reserves is not a safe and sustainable way to move forward. But I am comfortable with sending this out the way it is, and would like the opportunity, if the county wants to take an opportunity to, discuss this a little bit before we take a vote next month, then I would welcome, that discussion with them.
Okay.
Okay. So are you guys okay with that online?
So,
Roll with that.
Peter, so I've had several speculative assertions. So we need to be very, very careful how we discuss this issue, because our meetings, the recordings is subject to anybody that live anywhere looking at them. And we're not lawyers, right? So if you say that we don't want to use reserve because at a later date, we are going to be using that money for a project that we don't know how much it's going to cost, essentially you're saying that is the purpose why we have that reserve, and that's not it. For this particular specific topic, we are not using our reserve for the reasons that we talked about our last meeting. We should just leave it at that instead of trying to be speculative. This gets us in trouble. And also to say that the county can come at a later date before December 8th, is it December 8th? I think that's the date, right? To come and have a discussion. The county ought to take what is given to them, look at it, and on December 8th, instruct the person that represents them how that person should vote. In other words, if you're asking the county to come and discuss, then tell what we want to come and discuss. Or if I want to come and do the same thing too, when are we going to get to the final vote? I don't want to have to open us up for unnecessary discussion.
You all are muted.
Off computer.
We do want to set a direction and start moving in that direction. And I guess what I'm saying is, when we do that, we may get some discussion from whatever direction we decide to go. And it sounds to me like Representative Green and yourself, Mr. Gabe, are comfortable with moving forward with giving direction to send what was presented tonight out to the jurisdictions.
Right.
Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yes.
what we're gonna do. Assistant City Manager, you had some comment?
Yeah, I just want to maybe clarify a couple of things on reserves. So certainly before we would designate any reserve use, this body would have the opportunity to act on it. We wouldn't designate any reserves without that. So I just want to clarify, because we are talking about reserves and the potential future use of them, that doesn't mean that those reserves are obligated in any way, shape, or form until this body takes action. And so I think the concern that we are trying to communicate is using reserves for ongoing operations versus the potential of using reserves for one-time projects, which are kind of the nature of reserves. And so when we're kind of discussing the continuation of it, I think Sarah is just bringing up the fact that, we're flagging that these are going on to operational items. In a lot of cases, there are some one-time dollars wrapped up in that. You can see that in the budget. But the greater concern is that if we continue to rely on these dollars as operational dollars over time, that could create systematic issues moving forward. And so again, this body would obligate reserves in the future. So we just want to make sure that we're being clear and we're having those discussions, and that this is the body and the time that we would have discussions on how to use reserves. The other thing I would just kind of mention and just kind of clarity, just want to make sure that we're all, walking away with the same kind of understanding, is that when you're saying as presented today, does that mean, if you could just clarify on the updated or the budget that was presented previously in November, Deputy Mayor?
The budget that was presented here tonight is it, and with the assessments that are on page 2, is it page 2 or 3? Page 5. Looks like page 5.
With the budget and with the assessments is up on this screen currently.
Correct. Is that page 5? It's page 5 of my presentation.
Fantastic.
Okay.
And so this is, just in full clarity, this is the one where we have reduced the reliance on reserves, and that has brought up the assessments slightly from the previous one that was.
That is correct.
Great, thank you for the confirmation.
You bet. Thank you for the municipal people.
And so the direction that I have is to present this current budget that is up on the screen, this current assessment with the budget, with the reduction of reliance. That is what we're presenting in
Please
December.
do.
And it is a request that from JASCOM that I communicate this to jurisdictional staff.
Jurisdictions.
Okay.
So with that, is there any other comments or questions on this public hearing item?
We do, we may want to ask Ms. Frazier if she has any public comment for this hearing.
Please do.
Ms. Frazier, if you would like to give public comment during the budget hearing, please raise your hand. Okay.
Was there any written public testimony for this budget hearing that was submitted?
No.
Okay. All right, and with that, it is currently 6:07 PM and we will now close this public hearing. The next item on our agenda tonight is the October 2025 shelter stats and field data, and Sarah, our executive director, will be presenting.
All right. So just so everybody is on the same page, all statistics are year to date through October 31st. So we like to keep them at the end of each month. Shelter intake, I am happy to announce is
Hi.
Kelly.
Sorry, I forgot there wasn't a chat function here. I just to send my apologies, but I have to step away for our council meeting. I just wanted to be sure to be here for the budget discussion. So thank you all. I'll see you in December.
Thank you.
Councilmember Green. All right, so thankfully in October, intake has somewhat leveled off. So we did not see a huge increase and actually saw a slight decrease from September, which is good. That is signifying that we are hopefully on the downhill trend of intake, which is seasonal. Cross your fingers. We are still seeing a heavy increase. Dogs has actually lowered a little bit. So where we were initially at the beginning of the year seeing close to 30% increase in dogs, it has slowly gone down over time. We still have an increase, but it has now dropped to 11, almost 12%. What we are seeing that has been pretty steady throughout the entire year is cats have maintained that 30% increase the entire year this year. So we are seeing over 1,700 cats, which is several hundred, about 500 more than last year, and a little bit over 200 from 2023. Now, the only reason why that gap is much closer in 2023 is we had 5 different hoarding cases, one of which had 157 cats in that house. So that is why the differential is, the delta is a little bit closed from those years. So as you can see, we're still trending very heavy this year. We have also definitely exceeded our entire year's intake at this point. So we are several hundred animals over what our total intake was as of last year. We're still sitting at about a 34 total increase in intake over last year, with Thurston County being the majority of the intake at 58%, followed by Olympia at 21, Lacey at 14, and Tumwater at 7. The good news is positive outcomes continue to increase with those numbers. We are not entirely keeping up, but we have seen a jump in adoptions. So we're still over almost 200 adoptions higher than we were last year. Transfers are up considerably over the last 2 years. And our return to owner has actually stayed pretty static. And I would contribute a lot of that to all the external factors for getting animals returned to their owners that don't include bringing them to a shelter. So we have our lost and found groups, we have our lost and found reports, we have Petco Love. So there's lots of ways for animals to be reunited outside of coming to the shelter. And I think that's what's kept the numbers fairly static, even though we've seen a huge increase, which is great.
Wait, can you go back one slide, just real quick? I want to make sure I get that number. 1226. Thank you.
Field calls continue to go up. We did see a slight drop in October, again, as we should with cooler weather. We should be seeing a decrease in calls. So, you know, again, it's a good trend for us to see because they were so high comparative to last year. It's still high, but we at least saw a lower number, which is great than the previous month. But we're still 300 calls over what we were this time last year. And we've seen almost a 15% increase in field calls overall. Olympia is actually at just under a 1% decrease from last year, where everybody else has seen an increase. So Lacey is at 11.45%. Tumwater is at almost a 29% increase in calls, and Thurston County is seeing a 15.67 increase in calls as well. Again, majority of the calls are in Thurston County at 44%. Olympia is at 23, Lacey is at 23, and Tumwater is at 10. That is the end of shelter statistics.
I have one question. Something I saw earlier, and it was there's a number I saw and I didn't know what it meant. I even highlighted it, but apparently it doesn't save that once you close the iPad. There was a category that said other. And
other.
it had a huge number and I had no idea what that was.
Yep, hold on and I'll share that screen again.
Chickens. Probably chickens.
It is the chicken.
Is it? Probably.
So it is absolutely,
433
yep, so
owners surrendered.
let me bring up the statistics again so you guys can see. So here, when it breaks out, of course it did. So sorry. We'll just leave it on that for right now. So when you see other, right here, this includes anything that's not a dog and cat. So that's guinea pigs, snakes, parrots, you name it, anything that's a pet. But for us here, the significant increase is the large scale cruelty cockfighting case that we saw in February, where we had over 500 animals, but the majority of them chickens, the majority of them roosters, that we had to intake from that case.
And we call those owners surrendered. So we need to create a category for,
So there's subcategories. The reason why those are owner surrenders is because on scene, they were actually owner surrendered. If we had seized them, so if the owners did not surrender them, which many times they don't, then they would come in differently than owner surrender.
okay,
So, but under that owner surrender, there are subcategories for different things. So they may be owner surrendered in the field, owner surrender, for euthanasia, owner surrender for blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so in this case, 60 of those animals were actually seized on a warrant for evidence. And then 72 hours later, the rest were owner surrendered because the suspects were given a no animal order throughout as part of condition of release. They could not own or be near any animals for the duration of their court case.
Got it.
So they had to owner surrender to us.
Then they go into that category.
Correct.
Yeah, so if you look up 3 categories above, the right here, the custodial miscellaneous, that's the other 65 she's talking about. So that's why they just came in as a different take type because of that reason.
that makes sense now. I thought for somehow maybe there was just a large population of parrots and mice that couldn't stay at home anymore.
When you see, like, usually the guarantee is if you've seen a huge jump like that in our numbers in a specific category, no matter what it is, it's usually due to a field case.
Okay.
It's generally not somebody coming to our doors with 50 cats all at that same time. It is usually instigated through a field call.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, yeah, okay. Next item on our agenda is our last item on the agenda. It's gonna be a short night, and it is our director's report, Sarah.
Okay. So we had our Halloween adoption event where all adoptions were $31. It went for 2 weeks from October 20th through November 1st, I think is accurate.
Saturday is.
We adopted out 47 cats and 24 dogs. This was, of course, thanks to Best Friends and their grant that they gave us to do fee waived or reduced fee adoption events to help increase our adoptions. This one's we're just going to touch on briefly. So I was elected to the Association for Animal Welfare Advancement last week. This is a national board. The Association for Animal Welfare Advancement specializes in the professionalization of animal welfare professionals and animal shelter professionals. It's a national organization that also is the only animal welfare professional certification that you can get as well. So you can get your CAWA, which is a certified animal welfare administrator through the association. And so it's really exciting that, again, Joint Animal Services is brought to the national level for recognition for what we are doing here in Olympia and at Joint Animal Services.
She likes to glance over that, but I do want to say that Sarah sits on the 2 most important national boards that we have. So the NACA board as well as the AWA board, and this is a big deal, so I don't want to just glance over that. Because this is really the only place that professionals can go and get certified on the business side of it. So I do want to point that out.
Good
Yeah.
job.
Thank you, Andy.
Congratulations. The second one this year, right?
I was elected to NACA last year, but I got elected to the executive committee for NACA this year. So I'm serving as secretary for the NACA board.
I remember that. Okay, you know what happens when you start taking a lot of board assignments. Or do you? Okay. Stay focused.
Oh, absolutely. We're focused.
That's why she has me.
So we're also seeing a great increase in our community cat program this year. One of the highlights that we wanted to point out, because there's some differences on how our community cats come to us. So some of them are trapped through our field team. Some of them are caretaker driven. There's multiple ways that they can come to us. And so what's really great this year is just since August, 100 of our community cats who have come to us have actually come to us through caregivers that are willing to do the trap care maintenance of the community cats. So they're going directly, we're not returning them to the field ourselves. We actually have caretakers that are picking them up after surgery and bringing them back. And what I like to point out about this is, again, community cats are just that. They're a part of the community, whether they're a feral cat that's being TNR'd because there is no positive outcome for a feral cat at a shelter. And so it's much better to trap, neuter, vaccinate, and return them to where they came from. And that's usually where our field officers or Becca, our positive outcomes coordinator, or some of our volunteers come in, where they do the return after surgery, after they've come to us and we've made the determination that they need to go back into the field. But it's quite an accomplishment and a show of trust when we start having our community rely on those services, which is free TNR, thanks to a grant with Best Friends Animal Society, where they know that they can come bring a cat to us from their colony that they're maintaining and bring it back and care for it. So once again, this just goes to show that they're not feral cats out there surviving by themselves, which sometimes they are, but there is somebody who knows them and loves them, and they belong to that neighborhood that they are a part of. And when they go missing, when they're trapped and not returned, somebody in that neighborhood is missing them. And so that's one of the things that I like to point out. And 100 cats that have just come in through the community and caretakers is a really big deal. So I can't wait to share what our numbers look like this year. Year over year, we've kept growing our program because there is such a need here in Thurston County for that. Rescue transfers. So as of October 24th, 92 animals have been transferred to partner rescue organizations. A lot of these came from field cases where our partners were helping us transfer animals that had been seized on different warrants from cruelty and neglect, helping get them into different shelters that can take care of them a little bit better, have more resources than we do for some of them, and then also have a broader audience for adoption. And so that's positive outcomes keep growing and we keep building partnerships and relationships.
Question.
Yes.
So you use the word trap.
Yes.
Therefore, it prompts the question, these are traps that we're providing to these people?
Mixture of both. So some of the traps we are providing, we do rent traps out. But also a lot of these community caregivers already have traps because they want to make sure that these cats are getting spayed, neutered, and vaccinated. So it's a mixture.
We're always making sure that the traps are very humane.
Correct. They have to be brought in a humane trap.
That's just,
No, I appreciate the clarification. Training and certification. Our field officers continue to receive more training and specialties. So Officer Olson completed another certificate through Code 3. And we also had Officers Northrop and Bullar attend wildlife handling and chemical immobilization course that was held locally at Wolf Haven. It's not something we have to do a lot with chemical immobilization, but it is something that is good to know for safety reasons when it comes to animal control officers. So when the need for chemical immobilization comes in is when we cannot get close enough to an animal to actually snare them, get a lead on them, get a snappy snare, which is kind of like a.
It's kind of like a catch pole.
Thank you.
Not as evasive.
Yeah, so this is when it becomes a danger to the people around them to get close. And so having training on being able to immobilize from a distance with chemicals comes in handy. Not all the time, but it is something that becomes a part of our toolbox to keep everybody safe.
in the shelter stats, there's some wildlife numbers, and I forgot to ask when we were on that, but can you define wildlife as it pertains to the shelter stats?
Sure, so most of the wildlife that you're seeing that are being intaked through the shelter are usually babies, like orphaned babies. It's not adult possums coming through or things like that. Occasionally, we have, a couple of years ago, we actually picked up an injured bald eagle and took it to rehab. But in most cases, it's usually orphaned baby raccoons or possums and the occasional fawn that we have to find rehabilitation for. And so we're not certified as a wildlife rehabilitation center in Washington, so we only have 24 hours to find a rehab center willing to take them. Otherwise, we are actually mandated to euthanize them. So we prefer, if at all possible, that we don't intake them, and it's really only for emergency purposes when we do.
So no mountain lions or bears?
No, all small, all not mobile, all injured or sick, and usually in public. So like
Found by the public, called.
in a public area. So like we can't always go out on every wildlife call, just depending on where it's at. They're like, oh, I found it in this trail 19 miles into the forest. Like, we can't go on that. Like, we just don't have the ability. But if somebody's like, oh, I'm over here at Winco and there's half run over raccoon, like, we'll go out on that because of different reasons, but yeah.
Or like a random orphan raccoon found at a school, things like that.
Okay, all right.
And sometimes, usually with fawns, we've actually taken them from law enforcement. So it's usually, I think the last one we took was actually from Olympia Police Department. Came across a baby fawn in a hotel room. And so again, in a public place, right? Like, so it is when wildlife that cannot fend for themselves and are injured in a very public place.
Okay. It looks like you have a couple more slides, so I'll wait.
Just a couple of case updates. So the warrant that we went on, both of these cases we went on with TCSO. The first one was at the beginning of October, where we seized 17 dogs as well as a few cats. This was a larger case where there was also livestock that was seized on the property that TCSO took into possession. They were not able to meet the bond requirements, so they automatically defaulted into our care. So we have been able to successfully place almost all of the animals that we took into, they either have had adoptions already or have been transferred to other rescues. And then just recently, we coordinated with a small hoarding cat case of about 14 cats. Those just recently last week came into our possession because the owner unfortunately could not post bond. And so those are two case updates. We are still waiting for progression in the court cases as far as hearings in Thurston County court system. Santa Paws, our event that everybody looks forward to, is happening this Saturday and Sunday. So you had to pre-register. There are some walk-ins scheduled from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. It's a $30 donation, includes 5 digital photographs. Photos will be emailed to you by the end of November, so you can use them on your holiday cards or whatever you want to do. We make sure we even have some longer time slots for some of our more reactive dogs that maybe get stressed in chaotic situations where they have a little bit longer. We're spaced out so they're not going to run into other dogs, and everybody gets their own time with Santa. Santa is actually worked for us for a stint, and he still volunteers with us, so he's great at dog handling, knows dog training, and is really great and meets the animals where they're at. And it's not just dogs and cats that come. People have brought their snakes, their geckos, their parrots, their cats, you name it. All pets get to participate in Santa Paws. So that's this weekend. Volunteer and outreach updates. So we were out and about quite a bit. August, September, we had Animal Allies. So October, I want to point out, last month was actually our 1-year anniversary with Animal Allies that started this time last year in Timberland Library and expanded to Yelm Library as well. We participated in Pups in the Patch adoption event, which is sponsored by Olympia Subaru. That is always in conjunction with the ASPCA and Subaru Loves event. So it is a month-long adoption event where they do discounted fees for us, and Olympia Subaru also provides fun adoption packets for dog adopters during the month of October. And November, again, we'll continue to have Animal Allies Club, but we've really been out and about. Thurston County Preparedness Expo, Nisqually Housing Fair, lots and lots of activities. We also held another dog volunteer grief and support session. So earlier this year, Megan talked about how we created a support group for our volunteers who work with specifically dogs, but sometimes it's the cats, but more often or not, a lot of times our volunteers work with dogs that unfortunately may end up having to be euthanized for one reason or another. There's usually some medical, there's usually some severe behavior, but within that time frame, those volunteers have interacted with those at the beginning of the year that the volunteers can come together and they talk about how they're feeling about some stuff, and really it becomes a support group for each other. And making sure that everybody is getting what they need. We don't want volunteers to burn out. It gives them an opportunity to ask questions. And so that's been really powerful. And I also think a great experience because some of the staff will come as well. So it's not just Megan being there, but Becca's there. Sometimes the animal care techs are there. And so it really is an overall group experience and very cathartic for everybody.
Yeah, I think you showed us an image and it was at Joint Animal Services location.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And finally, our happy tales. This is Amos. So he was a 10-year-old senior beagle that came to us as a stray. He had severe dental, elevated liver values. And so thanks to both the foster team and the medical team, they were able to get him to a point where he was able to be adopted. And so that's him sitting on his new adopted dad's lap, giving kisses in the car. He loves car rides and hanging out with everybody. And he loves hanging out with dogs that come to visit too. So that's Amos.
Okay. Well, with that, it looks like we have reached the end of our agenda, seemingly in record time. Before we adjourn, I just kind of wanted to throw out a little something for next year. It seems like whenever we, or should I say meet with any of the county representatives and they know that I'm on JASCOM, the elephant in the room is always the livestock issue. And so if somehow early next year, we could put that on an agenda. What I really want to do with it is not promise anything, not say we're going to do anything, but I kind of want it to be known, what our ILA says. In addition to that, what would have to take place in order for livestock services to be even something that we could consider or entertain? I've explained that if, just like any other investigation, if there is a death, then that evidence has to remain in evidence in perpetuity. Right? So that's just one aspect of what we could potentially be looking at. But I do know that it is a service that the county says they sorely need. It is a service that they are not contracted for. It is a service that they would like to be contracted for, but nobody seems to know how to get that ball rolling or moving. And so, one of the things that I kind of want to do is just kind of outline potentially what it would take to potentially stand something up. I'm not saying that we need to do anybody's homework. I'm not saying that we are going to take on any responsibility, but I am saying that a discussion needs to be had about this aspect of animal services. And I don't know if we've had this discussion on this commission in the past. I don't think we have in the last 2 cycles. But it looks like something that if the other jurisdictions would be willing to entertain it, I think this is probably the best place to have any kind of discussion about it, or kind of let people know what it would take to pull something like that off. So if you guys are agreeable with that, it could be something, that we start conversing about early in the year, and see, how long it takes for us to kind of put the pieces in order and show what it would take to pull that off. I know when I say that, people immediately think, how come that's a lot of work? Right? Because I think that too, right? But as, stewards of these, of animal services, and I won't say the resources of animal services, because that's not really the deal. And again, we're not talking about jumping in all the way in and making something happen. Just showing what the pieces are of such a huge, undertaking. Am I making sense on that one?
You are. I would say that if we enter into any kind of discussion about what that looks like, we need to be very specific on what the end goal is. Because I don't want to entertain a discussion where the end is still that we are not providing service. And so I think it needs to be very clearly laid out what the actual goals for that discussion is.
Okay.
Because I don't want to go into doing all this work for, again, us not to provide services. I also think that this is specifically a county issue. And I do feel it's the county's responsibility to do some due diligence on this, since it's specifically their issue. And that includes what calls do they want us to respond to? So just to say we respond to livestock calls, that's a pretty overarching comment, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of consideration for housing said animals. Are we just going out on field calls? Are we actually hauling them and picking them up where we're going? Where are they being housed? There's very specific housing restrictions that come with that. What does it look like then as an agency when we cannot adopt out those animals and the only outlet we have for them is to send them to auction? What does that look like for us as an animal welfare agency that is meant to protect animals? I will also say there is increased liability, costs, people costs, and I can tell you right now, I don't have any place to put them. And so while I would say that's fine, I am, as staff, we are open to having that discussion, but I think there needs to be very, very specific goals in mind for what that discussion looks like. And I would also say we as Joint Animal Services staff cannot do all the work on this.
Okay.
While I understand that we might need to cost out some stuff, I think there's some due diligence on other parties' parts to actually ask other counties what it costs, what do they do? What does that look like and how they handle it?
I think,
Sarah brings up a lot of good points, and I think there's some other information that we've gone over too in the past about, you know, kind of zoning locations and what does that look like for having satellite facilities, and they're all good conversations and discussions, and I think it's just gonna take a longer bit of time and some stakeholder group and then some support too, as Sarah was mentioning, to continue kind of moving any momentum forward on just what a discussion like that would look like. I think the first thing we could do, and what I heard Deputy Mayor you bring up, is just take a look at the ILA and what's in the ILA. We can go over and take a look at that. And then certainly something that, you know, kind of for just next steps after looking at the ILA, one of the things that we're gonna have an opportunity to do next year is some strategic planning and thinking about that. And so that could lend itself as an opportunity also for maybe a goal for us to continue to explore partnership, to see what any type of future action could look like. So I think there could be some opportunities coming up here, but I think Sarah brings up a really good point of just recognizing that it's, you know, animal services is part of the discussion. But we certainly would need other partners and players involved to be part of that as well.
Yeah, and I like all the things that you brought up. And it kind of lets you know like how big of a topic this really is, right? And I think that would be a really good place to start, is just an outline of all the different pieces that have to be discussed in order for this to even be a thought, right? So like you mentioned 8 or 9 right off the top of your head, right? And of course your head is built for this, but if we, you know, if we put those down and we put them, you know, in an agenda or we just bring something to the table to talk about. I would, you know, ideally I want to help our partners as much as we can. We can't really help them with this, with livestock, okay, like at all, right? Because number one, we're not contracted for it. Number two, we don't have the facilities for it. We don't have the manpower for it. We don't have the dollars for it, okay? None of it. But it's a conversation, it's a topic that just continues to come up, right? And we've pushed on it. It's pushed on us. And eventually we are gonna have to talk about it. And but again, I'm not saying we go and do somebody else's homework. I'm not trying to put anything on anybody here. But what I do want to do is just kind of outline all the different little pieces that would have to come together and or be discussed and or vetted for the conversation to even happen. Because I don't think there is a real serious, you know, it doesn't seem like anybody really truly understands how much there is involved in just picking up a horse in the middle of the night and dealing with that. You know, I know the sheriff's county has to do some of those things in some capacity or another, or they make phone calls to make those things happen. But if we were to entertain that and try to put something together, what would that look like? How many different avenues and would we have to go down to even have that conversation? Nothing more than that. Would that be okay with this commission? Commissioner Claus, I know you have something.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it is a good discussion to have. I also know I've had a lot of discussions with Sarah and others throughout my time as a county commissioner since 2023 and have spent a lot of time in conversations with county staff and with animal service staff and City of Lacey staff to try to understand like the scope of the problem. And I do think that you bring up a good point that this maybe would be a good place to have that discussion, because this is a public discussion. We could have it in the agenda. We could have some sort of outline. But I also really agree with you that we shouldn't do anyone else's homework for them. And so as a representative of the county, I can maybe if there are like specific things that would help staff in going into a conversation like this, I could maybe get, and when I say staff, I mean animal services staff, I mean Sarah. And if there's anything I could get to you from the county that outlines like, hey, when we say livestock, this is what we mean. Because I think there are so many different conversations happening around the community. It gets really convoluted, and then by the time we say livestock, in a room like this, it's like, well, that could mean any number of things. We don't really know what the scope of the problem is because it's not something that Animal Services is responsible for. So if that's helpful, I could go back to the county commissioners and say, hey, this is a topic that was introduced as a potential discussion next year sometime. If we could maybe get a letter or a memo or a list to Animal Services to say, hey, this is, I don't know really what the path forward would be, but I'm happy to have the county put something together so that you all don't have to like try to come up with something with no context, but whatever I can do to help kind of get the ball rolling. I know this is a problem the county would love to solve, but I think there are mixed levels of comfortability with acceptance over the fact that Animal Services is not responsible for this. So whatever can be done to kind of alleviate some concerns on either end, I'm happy to help out wherever I can.
So, just in case I wasn't clear, what we don't know, and what we have not put out to the community is how many different pieces and levels are in this one seemingly small thing, because it's not a small thing. And so if we can just kind of share, like, we have to consider this, and that, right? We have to consider housing, we have to consider feeding, we have to consider all the, what is, what animals we're talking about. We have to consider all the different little pieces. We need to talk about the financial portion. It's just kind of a matter of people don't know why we don't do it. And they need to know.
So, Chair, we've heard from two representatives. It'd be helpful for us to just hear from the group as well, so we have some direction.
What say you, team? Doc, you want to start?
I think livestock is a huge can of worms. It's just, it is challenging in so many different ways, and there's so many pieces of puzzle. But I think just having an overall overview of like how complex it really is would be, kind of a deterrent to taking it on.
Very well could be.
I kind of looked at some numbers, 6 or 9 months ago, and what type of facility you would need to do all that. And it was like mind blowing.
And did your numbers include the amount of staff it would take?
No, mine would just
Would
feed
take,
toward
yeah.
vet care, and it was, and
And
facility.
then the hauling, yeah,
Transportation.
And
medical, but veterinary bills. Monthly fee.
And this is not something that can be solved with asking a few ranchers to just house
Yeah.
strays that are found.
There's
a huge
liability is a huge liability.
Feed, board, vet care, liability, transportation.
like the husbandry for a horse is totally different than the husbandry for a goat.
Or a cow.
And then get in a lot more trouble being just in a paddock than a dog or a cat,
Right. And if there was a death involved, we had to hold on to this animal forever until it dies.
You have to have walk-in freezers for that sort of thing.
What happens if the horse can't be actually housed with other horses?
Right.
Yeah, and they can hurt themselves in a round padded room, so just because you put it somewhere safe doesn't mean they're gonna stay that way.
Yeah, that's a whole lot.
And this is the conversation. This is it.
Miss,
Really,
Chair,
it's-
Well,
are we discussing this
Councilmember
now?
Agabi's talking.
Are we adjourning? Because,
Peter, you're gonna have to start over. We didn't get any of that.
so what I'm saying is, are we adjourning or are we starting a discussion about animal services relating to livestock? Because it seems like we are proposing solutions and are discussing the issue, but that's not essentially what we should be doing. You said you don't want anybody to go do an homework, but we should look at this as a possible topic next year, and we proceeded now to discuss the issue. See, time is of the essence, okay? I don't want to come to JASCOM and I was talking about issues that are tangential to, so Tumwater is essentially an urban city. Livestock is not something that the city of Tumwater will have any meaningful discussion on because it just doesn't impact Tumwater. And I don't think it does Olympia too, not even Lacey. So now it is a county issue. If the county wants us, meaning Tumwater, Olympia, and Lacey, to help solve the issue, then that will be done through another venue. Because as I said, now, we don't want to touch our reserve because we want to save those. We're trying to get the new facility. It sounds like we're putting stuff that don't necessarily have anything to do with why we're here. Or at least in my opinion, that's the way I see it. Or maybe somebody else sees it differently. I don't know why we ought to just out of the blue engage in discussions that really does not move us forward.
I think emergency management should handle it.
Yeah. And if we look into this or we start talking about this and we decide that this is better for another entity to oversee or begin the discussion or carry on the discussion, okay. That I don't see a problem with that. It's just that, you know, one of our partners has voiced to us multiple times, we have this problem, right? We have this one animal problem. And so, as a steward of, you know, animal services and this commission, you know, having a conversation that might give them some direction is something that I believe falls within our purview. I'm not saying we're going to take action on it, but I do. It's the expertise in this room that would be able to give any guidance whatsoever to our jurisdictional partner who has what they call a serious problem.
I guess my question would be, and this is to Councilmember Agavi's point, would be, is a JASCOM meeting specifically the appropriate venue? Or is it more a stakeholder group or a specific meeting that is set up with key people from JASCOM to discuss these issues with the county?
And if we decide that that's the way it needs to go, after having a conversation in one of our meetings early next year, then that's the way it will go. It does not.
So I think,
maybe we just start it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you are very right. We're having this. Sorry about the echo. I think you're very right about your assertion, Emily. So if we were to tackle this issue, given what I just said, that we're mostly urban cities, then it behoves that we will have a set committee of experts that will bring to the table these particular issues that are above and beyond what you and I can articulate in terms of how do we make it happen. And then if we're invited to the table to discuss, and then we can do that. But as at now, we're pretty very, very limited in what we can do. We don't even have a facility that functions for the animals that we look after, which is why we're getting the new facility. That right there is topmost the issue for us at this point in time. Any additional issue, we need to look for experts. What would you do with the cow? What would you do with the horse? Where are you going to put them? It's just basic.
Thank you. So maybe then what the right move would be, since we're not even talking about having a discussion like this until next year anyways. When I do my reports to the Board of County Commissioners, I can just say that, you brought this up as a potential discussion and see what direction they might wanna take, because if the county is like, well, we've already got it covered, we're talking with the sheriff, we're talking with emergency management, we're we're talking to the stakeholders and we're fine, then maybe it doesn't need to be brought back here.
Yeah.
But if I open it up to them and say, hey, this is something, something that Animal Services is willing to put on an agenda to have a discussion, what can I bring to the table for that discussion? Maybe that could be a question I ask, and just see if that's even something they could provide us with the information on, because I think it does make sense that if we try to have a discussion here, with this group, I mean, we could talk about any number of things, but then we're spending time with members of jurisdictions that this might not apply to. And then we might just be spinning our wheels for me to go back to the Board of County Commissioners and say, we discussed it at JASCOM and there's still nothing they can do. And then we're all sitting there like, okay, well, why did you have that discussion if the county didn't give input for that discussion in advance? So maybe I could start there and
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, and we know that there's not, this is not an action item. This is, we're not talking about doing anything.
Mhm.
What we're really talking about is what pieces would have to come together for an action item to actually happen.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to commit anybody here to saying, oh, we will do this and we will do that. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
What we do want to do is potentially just have an information gathering. What would it take
Mhm.
that we can, share with the county, even at the risk of putting together an outline. But this is one of our partner jurisdictions, and they have said, we have a problem. Maybe the problem is not solved by us. I'm not saying that we should solve the problem. But I don't see that anybody's identified the pieces of the problem. And put them together in any kind of an aggregate kind of a manner. It's none of it's granulated. It's not something that I've heard anybody say, this is how it would get done.
Deputy Mayor, if I could, I know Sarah's previously sent the county some very kind of general information on kind of livestock and some of those issues. And so we can certainly, get that information. But I think it would be a good step to see if, again, if there is even an interest, if the county has these services taken care of before maybe we carry on this conversation. And I think in the meantime, between now and then, we can take a look at it, maybe think about it a little bit more and see what are some possibilities. And so that way we can have a more informed discussion potentially at a future animal services meeting for what could be a scope of a possible further dive into this topic.
Mhm.
We all agree to that? Okay. Well, then, with that, again, we have reached the end of our agenda. So unless there's anything further from the group, I will call this meeting adjourned.